In a second-hand set of dimensions, on an astral plane that was never meant to fly, through wavering star mists, see the Great Atuin. Drifting onwards through space, atop the shell of the world's turtle, are 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad shoulders rests the Discworld. Welcome to Dining Table Discworld. We're reading through the Discworld novels and discussing them at our dining table. Be aware there will be spoilers for the current book and others in the series.
Hello, welcome to Dining Table Discord. I'm Dave.
I'm Kathy.
And today we are talking The Truth! But not too much truth. We're talking about the book The Truth, which was published in year 2000 and is the 25th Discworld novel, which was proudly plastered all over the front of the books.
Yes.
So, Kathy, what is the synopsis?
William de Worde, professional letter writer, is almost run down by a printing press. When the dwarves who own it show how quickly they can print multiple copies of his newsletter, William realises he has to find a lot more news. Surprisingly quickly, the Ankh-Morpork Times is printing daily editions written by William and satirist Chris Block, who hears things from young men and gets reports from many meetings. Their photographer, Otto, is a vampire who loves light, even though it doesn't agree with him, and the canteen crew distribute the news for pennies. William is devoted to the truth and won't publish any nonsense stories, like that one about a talking dog. When something strange happens at the palace, William investigates, despite annoying Commander Vimes to watch, and attracting the dangerous attentions of 2 very unpleasant men. William deals with an anonymous informant, the man who runs the city's waste, and the poorest people on the streets. That is nowhere near as murky as the aristocratic circles William comes from.
So, what's your first thoughts on The Truth?
Again, the book, not the concept.
Yes, because we are not philosophers.
No, I enjoyed it. I think I had enjoyed it before and probably didn't understand it quite as much. And now I feel like I understand it more, but it's kind of from a different time. Because obviously it's, now 26 years old. I was trying to think if I'd read any Pratchett books in the 90s. I might have read odd ones of his other books, but I don't think I started reading Discworld until, into the year 2000. So, but I do remember seeing this one around. I think it was around then I started reading them, but I didn't start with this one. I kind of worked up to it after a while. But I think this one onwards, I do start getting them a little bit more as they come out.
This one, I think, was the first one I bought as it came out.
I thought you had been doing that.
No, the other ones I think I bought later on.
Oh, okay.
Because they're the book club edition ones, a lot of them. They're not...
Oh, they are a funny size, yours, aren't they? Yeah.
Potentially the 5th elephant.
Yeah, that's a regular size.
We say looking at the shelf.
No one can see.
So the point is, I had this signed, so I went to a signing at the Andromeda bookstore. I have a signed copy of The Truth. Yes.
It says remember your potato, and there's a picture of a scythe, and then the signature of Sir Terry, which I don't think I realised that we had a signed one.
So did I not mention that?
No, I opened the book and I was surprised, like, oh.
I think I'd forgotten which one it was. I knew I had one that I'd got signed.
You're like, we'll do a podcast, we'll find it eventually.
Yeah, it'll come up eventually. But I think, again, ironically, I think I only read this once.
No, I definitely read this one at least a couple of times.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that, again, I kind of vaguely knew the premise, and then the exact details were there once I read it. But a lot of the ones after this, I have read only once. So this will be, this is part of the reason for doing the podcast. But no, I enjoyed it. As we'll get to later, I'm sure, it's an interesting viewpoint book, which, implies an entirely different book somewhere else in the universe.
Okay.
The other side of the story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, we'll get to that, If we get into it a bit, I almost wonder if Sir Terry originally thought of some of this as a watch book, then realised that wouldn't quite work. Or whether he came up with this first and thought, well, the watch will be about, but we can get to the watch. Get to that.
I've never been a big paper reader, so perhaps sort of that aspect of it didn't quite
I think
hit us home as much.
Probably worth saying this a little bit. I think, having discussed this beforehand, I think you and I both grew up in households where there was not lots of papers. The only regular paper was like a local paper.
Yeah.
They'd show newspapers on TV and you'd watch things and talk about the papers. And I used to watch Have I Got News for You? And Yeah, I was never a big paper reader either. And I think the main time I've come in contact with papers was back when I was working in libraries as well, and I used to have to stamp the front of the papers regularly, at which point I'd see the headlines. And I think that's how I came to dislike some papers more than others.
That's perfectly fair. I never had them in the house now and never got my news from them. I understood the idea of broadsheets and tabloids and the ones at the bottom of the barrel. So I understood those concepts, what the difference is between the papers, but I never really read them.
I think it was mostly the local one, which, an interesting fact, Barrow's Journal is, I think, the longest running newspaper. It's like the oldest newspaper in England.
Anyway.
The whole thing with maybe this book, but also some of the other books, like the later Moist von Lippertz books, are very much described as Industrial Revolution, as like the category they're put under, which is when putting everything into a sub-series or a category. Certainly with this one feels less in sync. I think also Moving Pictures like that as well. But it occurs to me that the Industrial Revolution category is really communication revolution, because the Industrial Revolution is probably the golems and what they had been doing in the background quietly, so we didn't even see until Feet of Clay. That has been the Industrial Revolution. That's why Ankh-Morpork's the powerhouse. But that's not really mentioned. And so it's called Industrial Revolution, but really, if you think about it, this is communications, the clacks, the whole post office thing, again, communications. The trains is more industrial. That's what gets industrial, but part of that's also communicate. But the whole thing is that what Pratchett's is building up to here is the industrial bit sort of already happened in a bit of a quiet way in the background, and then it becomes more to the forefront later. Although again, golems will be involved in that. I guess we'll get to it. But yes, but it's just occurred to me on reading these through. Well, actually, it's communication that's the thing.
That's the bigger thing.
There is a lot of mass production, but it's people power, which for most of history, that's what that sort of thing has been, but also the golems.
Yeah.
It's not mentioned. I think calling it Industrial Revolution sort of misses the fact that actually the communication's the bigger part of it.
Yeah, I think it's an easy shorthand, but it isn't actually accurate for lots of it.
It's actually probably kind of eliding some stuff. But so the fact that early on in the book, Vetinari is talking to High Priest Ridcully, and he's talking about using the clacks to find out what the cost of shrimp is in Genua before the shrimp can ever get here. And then, much like his brother, he has that thing of latching onto the wrong thing, getting confused by the conversation. At one point,
prawns flying through the air.
Yeah. At one point, Vetinari says sea commerce, and Heenan's like, "Oh yes, well there's many ships coming." It's like, no, not SEA, and it's C as in the letter C, which again is I think does he actually say sea mail?
I can't think so.
I can't remember if he says that, but you're clearly supposed to think email.
Yes.
That's,
e-commerce and email.
Which is interesting because obviously this has come out in the year 2000. It was being written, I guess, late 90s, at the point when, email was starting to be a thing and a thing that wasn't just boffins and computer.
Even becoming a lot more of something you had. I mean, you still got dial-up, but you still,
Well, the noise the internet used to make.
Yeah, but you're actually, yes, you had an email address and you were able to start ordering things online.
I mean, obviously newspapers are much older. I mean, this is where, again, the communication thing, and we're going to talk a little bit about printing on the disc.
That old chestnut.
Because this doesn't quite work.
It doesn't work.
No. Newspapers just been invented, and it's the comparative time, newspapers have been around a long time. I don't remember how old the Barrow's Journal is, but a long time. Old. And there were lots of other newspapers and things like pamphlets and leaflets and things like that. And it's sort of mentioned that movable type has existed for a while, but all the wizards were against it and the priests were against it, and so that's why it wasn't really done, which seems a bit like...
So, I mean, let's look
at the Engravers Guild.
Let's look at some of the things we've come across when it comes to printing in the Discworld. So we know that pamphlets are a thing because Barons of Lancre orders loads of them, or for all sorts of issues.
Back in Sorcery, Nigel had a load of stuff that was written by, apparently, Cohen the Barbarian, but was actually probably Dibbler. This is the thing. It seems like Dibbler's been running various scams for a bit.
Yeah.
But presumably through the Engravers Guild.
Yes. So you've got those printing. Then you've got Nanny Ogg's The Almanac.
Well, the cookbook.
And the Almanac as well.
Almanacs exist, but Almanacs long did exist. I mean, Pratchett has this interesting thing with literature in that obviously, he talks about how important libraries are. He has Elspeth as librarian. There's a lot of stuff about how you mustn't burn books. But he's also aware that this is a world he's written where people are illiterate and semi-literate. That is very common in this. That's how you get some of the fun spellings that people use.
Yeah.
Like, he's not saying, well, if you can't read, that's no good. Like, various people don't, and that's fine. I think Magrat sometimes reads stuff for people.
Yeah.
And we know various people have, like, interesting versions of spelling. This isn't a point where there's standardised education. And Pratchett acknowledges that. And the fact that, even somebody who can't read says, they like something that has soft pages, and the implication being it's being used as toilet paper. Because why would you waste paper? Again, not wasting things. We'll come later in this book.
Yes.
So Pratchett has this great respect for books and literature and writing and language, which we can tell just from reading the books. But he also is willing to be playful with it and willing to accept that, well, actually, for a long time, that hasn't been the norm.
No.
And that a lot of people won't be interested in words or writing because it's not their sphere. And I feel like this then travels over to news. There's a lot of people who are interested in certain parts of this, but a lot of it isn't their sphere, which, again, we'll get into. I think that's quite an important discussion in the book. But yes, it is a little bit weird that you've got all these books that exist, and also that, what was it, Nanny Ogg's cookbook now that it is specifically the Guild of Engravers as they do it, and they apparently don't have a printing press in any way yet, but have managed to print loads of Nanny's books and also defraud her.
You do the engraving of the sheet, then you cover it in ink and press down.
Yeah.
So it's not a printing press, but it's because it takes so much longer, and you have to then also engrave each of the plates individually.
Yeah.
So that takes so much more time.
Yeah.
But
once you've got one plate, you can do multiple copies.
Yeah, once you've got one.
Which is obviously what they're done.
Yeah, but also another one, Omnians. So many pamphlets.
Yes, the Omnians must have a printing press, now that you say it, because there's a lot of stuff about literature, and they will have a little copy of the Book of Om.
Yeah.
And you said, well, but maybe that's just not gone outside of Omnia, because again, they sort of say the priests don't like it, and the wizards don't like it, but I don't think they really have wizards in Omnia, and it's fine in their religion.
They have plenty of priests, though.
They have plenty of priests.
Yeah. But you have so many of these things that are potentially books and literature and writing and there's stuff that is printed.
There's a bit later. There's a later book where a character has a mouldering pile of what I think are like Mills and Boon-esque novels. And it's a bit like, if mass market printing was only invented a few years before, she can't have that. But I think that's not the focus. It's just the thing you might. And I only noticed that because I think it was Cory Doctorow on an episode of Desert Island Discworld, which is definitely worth a listen for anyone who's not encountered but has found us first somehow.
I'm impressed.
Well, you never know. He mentions that specifically in that book, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I think the point is the books as objects, and even as not fully disposable, but kind of disposable, useful objects exist, but they are more of a rarity and therefore probably a little more precious in certain ways.
I think but isn't the other thing of newspapers, sort of daily newspapers, it's also the disposability of them.
This is the thing. I think what's different here is the disposability of it. Although, the pamphlets are probably particularly the Omnian ones, I'm guessing that a lot of people don't want, are probably like that. Yeah, I think it's making it quite disposable. It's also going from very Ankh-Morpork focus. And again, other parts of the disc are probably... I imagine the Negation Empire probably has stuff.
Very much so, yeah.
Because they're technologically ahead, as far as one can tell.
It's the civil service have the calligraphy issues, so,
You just look at, obviously China inventing paper and these things earlier than Europe, just as an example. So I think it's something that's there, and it's kind of this idea of this kind of coming together quite quickly. Pratchett does do it a fair old...
I think the whole point is that they said, these things have been in place already. It is mentioned that movable type presses exist, except they were outlawed within Ankh-Morpork because of the magician's concern that if you print a magical book, will the letters remember the
spell?
Which is a fair concern in Ankh-Morpork.
The fact that when they first start up the Ankh-Morpork Times as a newspaper, Veterinary turns up, says William's in charge, and then asks a load of questions like, there isn't some sort of curse on this location? Is this fine? And he sort of says something about, the wizards having revolving doors to dungeon dimensions. Although, in fairness, they hadn't done that for a bit.
No.
By this stage. But he also again mentions Mr. Hong's and the Free Jolly Luck fish shop on the old temple on Dagon Street. So, it's just well, if this all goes wrong, it's up to you. Which I don't think William was quite expecting, but there we go.
So I think the elements of this technology are obviously around.
I think it's just now the authors decide to stick them all together.
Yeah, and obviously veterinary kind of goes, we'll see how this goes.
I mean, it's interesting this newspapers, because I'd say that in the sort of early modern type period that Ankh-Morpork or Discworld they usually sort of think is around, there's a point when people were starting to print pamphlets and when you did already have printing presses. In fact, William de Worde as the main character is clearly based on Wynkyn de Worde, who was basically a guy who worked with William Caxton. So obviously Pratchett, that's where Pratchett's taken the name from. In fact, there's different versions of what that guy's name might be. Like some people think Wynkyn might be the surname and maybe he was John Wynkyn or something.
Yes.
That's an actual, guy that existed. The idea is that the printing press has been brought in by dwarves from outside Ankh-Morpork who have gone there to start up this concern. They come to the city to bring a thing. So again, are the dwarf minds doing this or not? It's unclear. They don't seem to have much idea of words being movable as well, do they?
No.
The Low King has that big library, but the idea of Vimes being the person who wipes the chalk off the lesson. So clearly they have chalk and blackboards, which I know isn't paper, but it's a bit of a mismatch of things.
As with Discworld is quite often. Otherwise, we wouldn't get as much out of it if we talk about. So
very quickly, people get used to the papers because William had basically been writing out a single page of news, getting the Engravers Guild to make a copy of it, doing about 30 of those, posting them out to various people outside the city, which I think included King Barents.
Yes.
And various nobles and people, Lady Margalotta, just sort of saying, here's some stuff in Ankh-Morpork.
I think kind of a cross between keeping them up to date with the important news and throwing some
humorous things in, but not anything that wasn't true, like that ridiculous talking dog story.
I mean, that keeps cropping up and it can't be true.
And William's very focused on the truth as a person. It seems to have been, I think, quite literally beaten into him.
Yeah.
And actually, there were people like that. I listened to a episode of Not Just the Tudors recently where somebody was talking about how people got their news in the Tudor period, and that was mostly focused on ballads. So people would hear the news and they'd sing the songs, but they did mention people like newsletter people, like what William did, who would send out a sort of bit of a bulletin every so often. But once William's told, here you go, we can have 100 for you as easily as we can have 10. Then he suddenly go, he sent it to more people. He's like, I need more news.
Yes.
And then it just keeps going and the press gets hungry.
Yeah.
But the attitude to people of it is really interesting. So quite quickly, William realises people are like, it must be true, it's in the paper.
Yes. But they wouldn't let anybody go and write this stuff.
Yeah.
which isn't true at all. But,
yeah.
Which is kind of mirroring kind of the modern...
Well, that's the point. Yeah.
It's, general people thinking it's written in the newspaper, therefore, they're not going to waste space on frivolous or not true things.
Well, I mean, there is frivolous stuff in the newspaper.
Oh, yes, okay, but...
And also, there is stuff that isn't true. And again, it's, I think it's this idea of people on Christian going, the newspaper's published it, so it must be true. And yes, there is press regulation in the UK, but it is very much the fox that's running the hen house. And I can't say it's never been any good, I don't know, but it's certainly not been good from any time I can remember news. Also, I guess going back to our own experience of it, the first time I was very suspicious of mainstream media would be when I was 10 or 11. It's basically when Princess Diana died. Because the thing is, for as long as I could remember at that point, newspapers have been saying how awful she was. They were just really critical of her. They'd make all these criticisms of her all the time, how terrible she was. And occasionally, hear some good stuff about her visiting some AIDS patients in hospital and shaking them by the hand and, doing some good work. You'd hear that, but there'd be a lot of other stuff about, she was doing all these wrong things and she was so terrible and awful. And then, as soon as she died, suddenly everyone was like, oh no, the People's Princess. And I remember being there as, a child, being like, but you guys hated her literally the other week.
Yeah.
In fact, I can't remember which paper it was now, but I did read something fairly recently which sort of said, here was the headline they were going to do, which was, again, saying awful things about her. And then she died, so they flipped it really quickly. But I think if you had gone out with the original, look what she's doing now, presumably gadding about in Paris with her fiancé?
I don't know what the exact...
Well, her partner who wasn't white and wasn't part of the British establishment.
So,
but yeah. So I think I got a bit suspicious of that just from that sort of thing. But I think a lot of people, do uncritically take what's in the newspaper which is kind of how that works, and who owns newspapers and stuff like that. And I think, unfortunately, there's certain generations that then transferred that to the internet.
Yes.
Which has been overall a bad thing.
Yeah, don't do that, people. Don't trust the internet.
I mean, having said that, though, I don't think there's any age limit on that. I think people of all ages do. But yeah, I think there's a bit more understanding. It's like, this is just people anywhere doing stuff. Again, some people would argue that's more democratising than just the people who own this newspaper are going to publish this, and then all their rich buddies who own the other newspapers are going to, or there's one rich guy who owns all these newspapers. So, yeah, it's just, but yeah, perhaps just clearly looking at that. In fact, there's a bit where William thinks of the mail that's sent to the Times office. It was as if he had shaken a tree and all the nuts had fallen out.
Yes.
Which I think, and I was thinking of the angry people in local papers feeds that you get, which I don't go on because I don't really need to raise my blood pressure, but yeah.
Yeah.
That feels quite local. Although conversely, someone says, no one believes what they read in the paper, right? Which I think was from Dibbler. That's the other thing, because you can go too far the other way and be a bit like, it's all
made up. It's all sensationalism. It's there just to sell the papers.
Which is kind of also true, but like not fully the truth in the same way that they can't write just anything.
Yeah. It's a colour, there's a line in the middle.
There's a lot of nuance to it, which is not the kind of thing newspapers encourage one to think.
No.
I think. What I quite like is when Veterinary gives William some advice, that master of communications. Says, people like to be told what they already know. Remember that. They get uncomfortable when you tell them new things. New things. Well, new things aren't what they expect. In short, what people think they want is news, but what they really crave is old.
I mean, very, very, very true. I mean, look how much people are... would like to look back at the Blitz spirits and hark back to the good old days and kind of like to hear about things that are
Except, I mean, the thing is, if you go back to any point that somebody points out as the golden age and look at any newspaper archive from that time, people then will be complaining about something, how it was better before. Yeah. And I've seen people literally do that, going back, centuries, like the youth today, and I've seen somebody go headline by headline through to incredibly old things. So there's always an element of that. So that's partly nostalgia, but there's also, I think, confirming what people think they already know.
Yes,
which doesn't have to be harking back to anything.
No, but I think
if you hear about a crime, that's bad. There's crime, but then who's the perpetrator, who's the victim, and how you frame them is very key.
Which is very much the problem with our papers at the moment, who, some of them like to frame certain groups as the perpetrators or the problems all the time, which is far from
Which doesn't even make sense from numbers point of view.
Yeah.
But no. Also, as I saw a thing recently saying, apparently the number of small boat crossings is drastically down, maybe in half what it was this time last year, and people who are saying this is a problem should surely be celebrating, and yet somehow it's still and this goes back to the thing in Jingo about suddenly the problem was Clatch. It's a bit like
it might not
it'll get mentioned and suddenly everyone's like that, and when you're like, but how much does this actually affect your life?
It might have been that it's not the problem at all. Anyway, this is not Dave and Kathy rail against the inequalities of the modern world, we are adjacent to it at the moment.
The books are still so relevant, so you kind of have to talk about it a bit. They're kind of inventing this thing, and William kind of knows that. And there's some interesting things that get brought up, like the headline writing being a sad attempt at humour.
Yes.
With terrible puns. I always like it when Terry Pratchett comes up with puns and then has people within the world of his books sort of comment on how terrible the puns or jokes are. It's like he knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
William's satirists don't agree on what kind of things they should be publishing, which I'll get to in a bit. Yeah. But William wants to do the big stories and the stuff that affects the whole city and political stuff, and satirists people just want to hear about what happened at this meeting they were at, and they'll see their name in the paper. The Ankh-Morpork Times feels like it's obviously a mixture of big national paper, but also local news because it's still a city-state. And yes, it's a very large city-state, or a very popular city-state, but it's
still
not
got that kind of
local feel. Yeah. I mean, at one point, William's trying to explain to Vesnari, who's allowing him to do this, because we know if he didn't want him to, it would not be happening.
Absolutely.
What kind of thing he's publishing. And William tries to explain, Veterinary goes, so we have what the people are interested in, and human interest stories, which is what humans are interested in, and the public interest, which no one is interested in. Then William says, except the public, sir. Veterinary goes, which isn't the same as people and humans. And he goes, I think it's more complicated than that, sir. The veterinary goes, do you mean that the public is a different thing from the people you just see walking about the place? The public thinks big, sensible, measured thoughts, while people run around doing silly things. William goes, I think so. Which feels a lot like the bit in Men in Black when Will Smith's character says, oh, but you can tell people about aliens to understand. And then Tommy Lee Jones' character says, no, a person is smart. People are are stupid and,
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of what's being said here.
I
Different words.
It's...
Also, I mean, it's because he's got a multi-species world, it's a bit odd that he keeps saying humans. It's like, well, here he's clearly just talking about people more generally, but he needs enough words. Yeah. But yes, because when he's like, this is the public interest. And this is the thing, people quite often like, oh, well, something's in the public interest. But again, who decides what the public interest is? Is it useful for the BBC to say, look, this tiny group of an already marginalised group are doing a thing that we think is iffy? And rather than people going, well, why are they doing that? And there's a structure in place that's forcing them to do this. Just like, look at these people.
Yeah.
It's like, well, should the talk not be the structure? Anyway.
Yes.
There's also the fact that once they get going with getting the news, you see it everywhere. And William and Satyrus specifically, as what eventually called reporters, are going about seeing stuff. William tries to get them out of the office and we need to go somewhere, before it realises we need to just go and have a nice calm time. And then there's a fire and a cart gets loose and then an old lady's almost run over by a loose cart, except that Captain Carrot saves her, and then it's a brewer's cart and a load of kegs go rolling away and a load of people decide to help those kegs to freedom. And then there's like a block party, I think, because there's a load of kegs.
It's a little silly, but it's kind of showing, once you're in that kind of world,
William keeps thinking, the press is hungry, it needs feeding. Yeah. And I immediately thought, 24-hour news cycle, which wasn't, I think, a thing so much.
No, because you didn't have 24-hour news.
But now we do, so people have to find things to do. So they'll just be like, the celebrity has died. Let's get a helicopter to fly over the house of a deceased person where their family are mourning again and again, just in case we see something. It's like, you can just tell us on the 6 o'clock news and then get on the 10 o'clock news. If nothing's changed, just do the same bulletin as the 6 o'clock news or just update us then.
It wasn't until we had more channels and Sky TV did you have 24-hour news channels.
We also now have the internet.
But yes, the internet, You only had the news bulletins. But I can kind of definitely see you really exist in a world where you are a reporter and you could just see stories everywhere. Whether it is as quite as obvious as that, or even just you start digging into something by accident and going, hang on a second, this is bigger, I can see a story here.
That again sort of shows the difference between his reporting on the thing and his investigative journalism. I mean, we have quite a nice local news thing that's online only that does seem to do stuff like this. And you do get stuff like this in certain publications, but other places will just be like, a government person said this. And you're like, is that true? Why are they saying that?
I think
that, like, you can say they've said it, but, like, are you going to comment on the context of that?
I think the idea of investigative journalism still exists, but the
people are doing it.
But the way it's published is different now. You used to get it in the mainstream papers, but now.
Well, I mean, I don't know because I don't read any of these papers. I don't even see the headlines anymore.
But I think you get less of it as it's now more in independent media or things. So.
It's quite funny because at one point William says to Satyrus, so we've been press ganged.
Yes.
Which I thought was quite good. Also later William realises, was it bad that when we saw an old lady was going to be hit by a cart before we saw the Watchman save her, my first thought was to grab my notebook and start writing it down. Which again, perhaps you wasn't know that, but that feels like quite a thing nowadays where people are like, a thing is happening, let me grab my phone and record it, or send some messages about it. Which, I mean, people do still help out, but certainly some people are filming.
Plenty of people filming, yes.
And so Satyrus says, well, some people are heroes, and some people jot down notes, and sometimes they're the same person. And William goes, do you think that's really true? And she's like, really true? Who knows? This is a newspaper, isn't it? It just has to be true until tomorrow.
Unless it's the Daily Planet. And then there is someone who not jots down the news and goes and saves them.
I'd forgotten we might mention him, but yes, okay.
It's a little niche on that. One example.
I don't think it's that niche. Steve Bannon is literally the most recognisable superhero.
No, but one example of someone who writes the news as well as is the news.
Yes. So that's, I guess, the newspapery stuff.
Yes.
I feel like a lot of stuff Patrick is talking about stuff that feels very relevant now, but also the context of it is very clearly from before, which I can kind of remember.
Yeah.
Not in completeness, but like as a thing that I was aware was about and happening. Should we go through some characters now?
I think we should do, yes.
William de Wood, who I think it was in the Fifth Elephant episode you mentioned weaponised aristocracy referring to Lady Sybil.
Yes.
And William is like a different version of this. William's brother, his older brother, who's therefore the heir to the family title, was killed in Jingo. You know, like just a few people were killed in Jingo. But there's actually some consequences.
Which is good. Which is
from
nice,
that, book about a war and how war is bad, in which it didn't really turn to full war. But some people were still killed, and here is a consequence. So William is now the heir to the family title and estate and stuff, but he was raised as the second son, and also has had a big row with his father and cut ties. So he's good with words, and he always tells the truth. He's not always honest, exactly, but he tries. But the thing is that William's father is mentioned so much in this, in kind of William's recollection, that when he actually turns up, you're like, oh, have we not seen this guy yet? But with Otto's creepy darklight thing, there's even a bit where a photo of William with something that shows the truth, but in a weird metaphorical sort of way, actually shows William's father hanging over his shoulder in a photograph of him.
I think this is
which in a moment that was actually slightly creepy.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. Lord de Word is such a big part of William's upbringing and life and how he sees the world. It's difficult to escape despite the fact he keeps trying. Well,
the thing is that William, he does these newsletter things. His job is to read things for people. So we mentioned before, not everyone's literate. Quite often if there are letters, William will read them to people. He'll write letters for them to send back home, because obviously so many people coming out of the city.
He's very forward thinking. He's got numerous form letters that you only have to, he has to just fill in the which I think is quite sensible for a.
I have quite a number of email templates, so yes. Yeah. But he's living this regular sort of life. He wanders around. He's got this job, but he's living in a boarding house with a load of other men that don't have families.
Yeah, he's not making a huge. He's making a living, but not
just about. He's scraping by. But on the other hand, we'll get to this in the section on class. This thing, William's one of these people who's really trying to get away from his father, both in terms of not living under his roof or being supported by him and supporting himself, but also in terms of how he is. Like, quite often he'll think things and he'll be like, oh, that's what my father would think. Or he'll be a bit like, oh no, I'm fine with it. He knows his father has said so many offensive and unpleasant things. And I think, just thinking about what I've heard from other people who've read Pratchett and Discworld, is that quite often this was their thing that was a bit like, no, there's a different way of being. You don't have to listen to all this stuff.
Yeah.
So it's quite interesting. You've got a young man in it who is a bit like, oh, no, that's hateful and prejudiced, and I won't be part of that, and I'm not involved in that, and I'm going to, argue against it, and I'm not going to be that way. Because I think that's something that a lot of Pratchett's readers might have been dealing with themselves.
Yes.
Just thinking of a few things I've heard from people,
having a parent who is...
Oh, there you go,
Yeah, who has... views that to say they're not PC is an understatement and a half. It's difficult to run away from them sometimes. They are very informative. I look back at some of the things that I said even 20 years ago and go, oh. I like to think I'm continuing to branch away from that kind of. But it's when you have such a, and it's less so with me, but when I imagine when you have such a forcible personality as a parental figure, whose views are so... I mean, let's be honest, the motto he keeps mentioning all the time. Yeah,
so William's father's favourite motto is, a lie can run around the world before the truth has got its boots on. And, that becomes a bit of a thing. Part of it is that William, obviously, again, being nobility, he saw his father some of the time, but he was actually sent away to boarding school and most of that, although that, again, sounded like a bleak, grim place.
Yes, because his older brother got sent to the Assassin's Guild.
Yes, because he's the spec.
But he got sent to this terrible boarding school where you just kind of had to get through it.
And the thing is that is kind of what rich people places are like, which is weird because they're rich. Wouldn't you make it nice? But I think that's maybe what you have to go through to then...
Roll around in your piles of money?
Well, no, I think it's more you have to go through that sort of thing so that you, I don't know, feel really angry about stuff and therefore are ready to basically oppress the entire country.
Possibly, yes, as well.
I mean, just sort of looking at, at least recent history. So William's now living in a different class to what he was raised in, but he's still encountering, I guess, more petty bigotry.
Yes.
Because obviously the aristos can actually very much act on that, which, actually, that's quite newspapery, isn't it? It's like a load of rich aristocratic people have decided what the bigotry will be, and are going to make sure everyone else shares it.
Yeah.
Again, very much describing our media landscape. But William's quite often there, like, round the breakfast table with all the other boarders at the boarding house. You know, there's one guy who always says, "Oh, no offence meant." And it's like, William wondered why he always disliked people who said no offence meant. Maybe it was because they found it easier to say no offence meant than to actually refrain from giving offence.
Yeah.
And then later, when after William's done this very impressive bit of investigative journalism, one of the people at the table, who's the main one that does that, says, "Oh, you know what they say?" And he's like, "No, what do they say?" And then he loses, he goes absolute librarian poo at him and goes, "Who is they?"
Yeah.
You know, it's like, cite your sources.
Yes.
The other thing with William is that he is good with words. And so he's very good at seeing the gaps and seeing the stuff people aren't saying, but he also thinks through phrases quite a lot in a fun sort of way. So I think, Pratchett probably got quite into this sort of character because obviously Pratchett's
certainly early on in the book, you get him some plays on which you can only do in the written
in the narrative.
Yeah, some plays on kind of word usage that I thought was quite nice.
Yeah. At one point the Bursar says something to William about dragging, kicking and screaming into the Century of the Fruit Bat. This is very much a novel published in the year 2000. There's a lot of concern about, we're changing Century. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah. And William sort of thinks, why are things always drive kicking and screaming, not led gently by the hand? And I think Vetinari, although he couldn't have known that because it's a narrative thing, kind of says something like that later to Drumnot, who doesn't quite understand it. Oh no, that's it. There's something about dragging, kicking, screaming to Century of the Fruit Bat. And William goes, that's the one we're already in, which is about to end. And I have to say, as somebody who was at university doing an ancient history degree, in 2004 to 2007, yes, there's definitely something where somebody would say a century and you'd be like, I think you're referring to the one we've recently left rather than the current one. But in fairness, these people's job was to be quite a long way in the past. So
yeah, but let them off.
Yeah, but I was just a bit like, oh, that does sound like an old academic in the noughties. Which I think, is that what we're still calling that decade?
I have no idea. I don't keep up on these trends.
No, I saw somebody's car radio before that said the tens. I was like, is that what we're calling it? I feel like last decade doesn't have a good name either.
No.
We're in one that does have a good name now, but so far it's been kind of rubbish. Yeah. Anyway, it's interesting that William sort of notices the way that people are talking, and also that the one dwarf at the boarding house doesn't say much, but occasionally he is sharpening his axe, and then...
Yeah, that's fair enough.
So there's also stuff that various people, so mostly Ganilla, who's a dwarf and the kind of main one that William talks to, and also Otto, will say stuff to William. They can tell that he was raised in a way where he's supposed to think like humans are better than them, and also that he's probably better than other people. And again, you can kind of see that when William first sees Vimes, he sort of thinks badly is what you'd apply to him, badly dressed, badly spoken, and then later also badly rested. But it's just that he sees Vimes and his first thoughts, and we won't get to the different thoughts thing until the Tiffany Aching books, is, oh, look at this scruffy guy.
Yeah.
And I think it shows that sometimes William thinks things that have just come from his upbringing, but he's always trying to push against it. And I think he's a bit embarrassed that sometimes the others can tell that he's trying to push against the prejudice against other species. But they're like, no, but we can tell that you're trying, which is sort of fine and good to an extent. But I think there's also an element of, and again, this feels a bit of an older thing, a bit like, well, as long as you're trying... It's fine. Yeah, and it's like...
No.
I mean, William doesn't actually do anything... I mean, compared to Vimes, William doesn't actually do anything where I think it's particularly offensive or anything where he does that. There's times when he sort of doesn't understand. And in fact, he has a long conversation with Ganilla about dwarf stuff and human stuff, and William's like, oh, I won't use stereotypes. And Ganilla's like, well, no, that's not a stereotype about dwarfs. That's just how dwarves are.
Yeah.
But William's felt a bit uncomfortable with that. And I can understand that. There's times I've sort of thought things, and you sort of notice yourself, like, oh, that's not the best. But, you've not done anything on it, you've not said it. No. And you can kind of spot the stuff in yourself. Again, there's been a lot of focus on, well, as long as somebody's good intention, then they're trying. And it's like, there's a point at which we have to be a bit like, okay, but if your trying still results in harm, you have to be willing to be a bit like, oh, I'm sorry, and I'll not do that again.
It's like, and if you've been trying for 20 years, perhaps you need to get on to actually doing rather than it feels like it's a little bit more, yes. You're not really affecting any change. You're just using it, you're just using it as an excuse to still do or say what you want, but under the guise of, well, I'm trying my best.
And then, I guess the last bit is there's a big confrontation with William and his father, which I think we might get to later. William, having heard about a dwarf marriage custom where people buy themselves off their parents, he sort of tries to buy himself off his father, like dwarves do. But, I mean, Lord of Wood won't take the money. It's a bit like, oh, you're making this about money. It's about family. Although saying that, the fact that the owner of a newspaper is not publishing a story that implicates his powerful father because of family is A, oh, that's not great, and also B, clearly how it works.
Yes.
And it's interesting because then actually he's talking to Otto, who at that point has then met Lord Wood and scared him off, which is quite funny. William sort of says a load of stuff to describe his father, like pig-headed, stubborn, arrogant. And Otto's like, oh, but you do try not to be. And William's like, what? I'm talking about my father. And he's like, oh. And then William says some more things. And I was like, are we still talking about your father? And it's this idea that actually William is quite like his father. Because, of course, the man raised him.
Yeah.
And he was raised in that area. And, yeah, he's trying to do good with it. But, that amount of him just feeling he can walk in places, that feeling he's allowed to be places, that he can ask people questions, he can do things. It's a level of confidence that other people do not have.
No.
And he has it because he was raised an aristocrat. And he has it because he was told at some point very forcefully that he was the pinnacle of everything. And now he's like, oh, no, that's not true. But, he can still act like that.
Yeah.
And so I think William just doesn't like being told, well, actually, that is kind of also what your dad would do, but for a different cause.
I think the thing with, obviously, it's, from our point of view and in our sort of world, it's not good that he didn't publish the truth of the whole conspiracy in order to protect family, because that's not brilliant. But in some respects,
it also happens all the time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. But if you look at the world, the Discworld, look at Ankh-Morpork, would the people have cared?
Well, I'm going to get to this when we talk about class a little bit more. I mean, the newspaper can say this person did a thing, but, if nothing can touch them, nothing can touch them. If they're rich enough, nothing can touch them.
I'd also argue that as long as Veterinary knows...
Yeah, and William did kind of run his dad out of town.
Yes, and Veterinary will know the truth. And
he may already know.
Yes, and that's enough to... There will be a reckoning there. But the people...
Well, yeah, we'll get into that. Speaking of which, shall we move on to Satirissa?
Yes.
So she's the main woman in this.
I mean, it's nice we have a lady,
I mean, we do talk about how Pratchett writes good female characters, and obviously the Witches book's very, filled with women, but you do start to notice after a while that a lot of the other sub-series is there is the lady that's in this.
Angela?
It's gonna, I mean, it does improve, Cheery comes along, and there's
true.
more. But yes, I think certainly early on you're a bit there is one lady in the book. Susan doesn't tend to have a lot of female friends that we have any stuff with. No. There's only Isabel and Mort. So there is a little bit of a Smurfette thing still as a thing. But there we go. So yes, Satirissa, William knows her because her grandfather's in the Engraving Guild, and he's the one that William would normally go to with his newsletter. Yeah. And obviously when the printing press starts happening, she turns up and is really angry because it's taking the money away from her grandfather. But then she gets pulled into the whole thing, as everyone does really quickly to begin with. And she's basically this sort of, I think, aspiring middle class. Well, she's middle class. She's from a guild family, but she's trying to be respectable. And she's sort of very aware about what you are supposed to do that's nice or not, or what's correct. And again, it reminded me a bit of Susan's employer in Hogfather. Who kind of has these pretensions. And Susan, an actual duchess who doesn't really care about that, is I don't know. So it's that. But underneath that, Satirissa also does have quite a strong sense of justice. She's got a good eye for finding things.
She's possibly a little naive in places, which is...
Well, I think her naivety is in specific, where she's being respectable. So it's she doesn't fully understand why the humorous vegetables are that humorous.
Or why the young men like to...
This is the thing. A lot of young men tell Satirissa things, so she writes it down. She also gets a lot of reports from meetings. So she's very much doing what I feel like is the local news bit, whereas William's the political editor and she's human interest, which, again, they have conversations about. When the newspaper becomes a family, when Otto is struggling with, not drinking blood, I get the impression that Satirissa's rather large-chested.
Yes, I just
and then
doubt.
when she faints a bit and she's sort of breathing quite strongly, that kind of starts setting Otto off a bit. So she tries to help him. with what I guess could for her be quite a dangerous situation. And then she makes the dwarves help. And later she's like, right, I'm prepared for this. So she gets like a blood sausage, and she gets them to help out, and they sing some of the songs that they sing at the Black Ribbon thing.
Yeah.
And the point is she's got somebody who's like a colleague, but I think also kind of a friend who was part of the team. And she's like, right, having this problem, she seems to brush past the fact that she's the one that's probably most at risk.
Yes.
And it's just like, right, well, what can I do to help? We'll get, a cardboard cigarette, and we'll get... So she got some literature, and she's like getting everyone to help out, and she makes the dwarves help out. So she's obviously got a certain amount of strength of personality.
She basically strong arms a bunch of dwarves into singing, which, I mean, some dwarves will sing a drop of a hat, but usually about gold.
Yes, we're singing about how nice cocoa is.
Yes.
Not the B word. So when the Engravers Guild then set up their own rival newspaper that's the Inquirer, which is clearly the tabloid with a load of nonsense, she knows the guy who's now in charge of the Engravers Guild, and said, actually, we can do printing now, because I think the other thing was the Engravers Guild had been holding it back as well.
Yes.
So again, there'd been a commercial interest in this, as well as the priests and the wizards. But she says that this guy is somebody she's known all her life, because again, she's from a guild family. And she mentions, a childhood encounter where he broke a toy of hers. Sometimes you have a person where you have a childhood encounter and you're like, no, that was quite telling for the rest of things. Yeah. But at another point, she also says that he has wandering hands, and you can't trust a man like that. It's like, this is why you need to have a lady around. To be a bit like, when everything's been burned down, her and William, in a bit of I think a slightly manic sort of state, are talking about what they could do. Oh, we could do magazines, like women's magazines, men's magazines. And then he kind of describes what were the different women's and men's magazines in the late 90s.
Yes.
Where it's a bit like, she's like, oh, ladies, fashion. What are the ladies wearing? She's talking about fashion. And William's like, we could do stuff for men, like ladies not wearing fashion.
Yes.
It's like, what are the dwarves wearing? And it's like, chainmail and armour. It's always chainmail and leather. It's always chainmail and leather. But they're trying to think of different things. And the other thing is that Satchel is the person who goes to the meetings, or she gets the minutes of the meetings and writes them up. And she's like, people like to see their names in the paper.
Yeah.
People like to see that this group was doing this or that. There's the fact that there was I think it was a florist's meeting where people were doing flower arranging, and the naked man ran in, but the focus was very much on the flowers. That caused a bit of a ruckus.
Yeah, it's the naked man thing. It's the kind of the last line.
Burying the lead.
Yes, which is is
that how you say that? I've only seen it written down.
Yeah,
I think it must be that.
But I mean, it shows growth later on that she realises that no, you lead with the naked man.
Because she's learning reporting, and she's the one who I think does a lot of the sad attempts at humour that is headline writing.
Yes.
So Thatcher's is quite good. And again, later she's the one who will kind of go on at William about the class thing. So we do Good Mountain and the Dwarves.
Yes.
Who he keeps calling lads, which is a very masculine term. And fine for dwarves, because I guess dwarves, there's no cheer in this. They all seem to be guys. But then they do some stuff that doesn't seem dwarvish. And I think Pratchett was trying to do the newsrooms are very masculine sort of places, which I can kind of get, but sometimes it doesn't quite make sense. The book starts with dwarves can turn lead into gold rumour. It also mentions dwarves having pointy ears, which I feel is the first mention of that.
Yeah, I don't know where that came from.
It's just in there. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's a detail I've not had before. So Gunilla Goodmountain and Bodney, they want to be. Are they engaged, or they want to be engaged?
Yes, they want to make enough money to buy.
Well, yeah, to basically pay their kind of wedding price thing. I can't remember if there's the exact word for it, but they're setting up with a load of other dwarves, and they're basically the lead into gold is like the lead of the printing press turning into money for all the printing. He's the one who actually figures out, well, if you get these street people to sell the paper for pennies, and they keep making it cheaper and cheaper, and he's like, well, it's like, no, the cheaper you make it, the more we sell, the more money we get.
Yes.
I mean, Goodman's figured out the economics of this, but again, he's clearly the one running the things. And
he came with the idea of printing stuff without the. Once he realises that people.
He sees William's newsletter.
Yeah, once he realises that after the first batch gets sold very quickly, he realises, hang on a second. Yeah. So very quickly, I think pivots to completely just being a newspaper press rather than a.
I think they do bits and pieces of the stuff. I mean, again, Veterinary says in this Ankh-Morpork is the biggest dwarf city with 50,000 plus dwarves. Yeah. And I feel like in fifth elephant, they said it was the second biggest one. So I don't know if that's been a shift or if it depends how you're counting.
I think it depends how you're counting.
But yeah, so you've got the dwarves who are the lads, and they're always working on the press and making it better and stuff. And
upgrading it.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason it's called Ankh-Morpork Times is because William's going to call Ankh-Morpork Items and then going to kind of typos it.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, leave it as Times. There's also the fact that William gets to know the whole thing so well that if he sees the dwarves dipping their hands into the trays to put the letters in place, he can tell which word it is, which they then use to signal later when, William's being held.
Yeah, I mean, that's a neat little, because obviously it's quite a skill to because you were having to write it in completely inverted.
Yes, that's backwards.
And doing it at speed as well, because I think the key to movable type is speed.
Yeah.
So being able to knock it out quicker. So you get a number of mistakes, and quite often they'd make a mistake in the
log line.
Yeah. So it should be the truth will set you free.
No, the truth will make you free.
Yeah, the truth will make you free, but I like, my personal favourite is the truth will make you fret.
It's the truth will make ye fret, which is also the name of another Discworld podcast that, again, unsurprisingly, is bigger than us.
Yeah.
We're like a small scale, we're like a newsletter.
We are very much a pamphlet.
But thank you for listening, person listening.
Yes, thank you.
We do appreciate it.
Please tell you all your friends, especially if they like Discworld.
Yes, I mean, I've told various people that I have a podcast. I'm like, do you read Discworld? Now I'm like, there's probably not much point listening. But yeah, so the dwarves are kind of this big group. So you've got Good Mountain, and then you've got Bodney, who you don't realise is his partner until he's talking to William about the dwarf wedding thing. And again, William has that moment of, who's the... No, wait, dwarves. It's like... But there is an odd bit, because at one point when Satirus has borrowed she needs to go to more fancy functions, which isn't how close that. So William's like, just borrow one of my sister's dresses. Again, she's got loads, just borrow one. Yeah. And Satirus goes into a mansion, borrowing a dress of a woman who has 100 dresses. And oh God, and sort of thinks maybe a woman with 100 dresses will notice if one's missing more than a woman with 10. But she's wearing the dress, and it needs to be adjusted a bit because she's slightly different shape. And so she twirls around so William can see if it fits. And it says the dwarves whistle, and I'm like, what is this? Because dwarves don't have, until very recently, and certainly as a society and of structures, don't really have female as a thing. It was quite recent. And it's very clear that dwarves are attracted to other dwarves, and then it's only later that they kind of figure out what's happening underneath, and that's just their business and no one else worries about it. But I don't think they'd find humans attractive, nor would they find femininity particularly attractive. So it feels like that's just perhaps being I need to have a newsroom thing that would happen. It's but these are dwarves, and they don't seem that interested in any way discussing or signalling sex stuff.
No.
Apart from Casanunda, who, again, very much an exception.
Yes, very much.
So I felt there's a moment where I was a bit again, having very recently read so much dwarf type, the building dwarf stuff, and that feels odd. I mean, I see what it's referencing.
It's a little out of character a bit, but perhaps... But
it's a group he's calling the lads.
Yeah, but perhaps they were just signalling...
They've seen other humans signal approval this way, and they're copying it, because that's a human thing.
They think she looks fine.
Yeah.
With a lowercase f rather than a capital F, and just,
Yes. But yes, so the interesting bit is, William talking to him about stereotypes and cultural differences. So, and it's it's fine for dwarves to think about gold all the time because they're dwarves, but humans who do so are misers. And then he explains the tradition of what will happen is where there's a couple who want to get married, they will raise up enough money so that they can each buy the other off of their parents.
Yeah.
And that basically involves tallying up all the stuff that has cost the parents to raise them. It's it can be quite a lot to raise, you've got all the food. And he says, but, quite often if you've done work for your parents, that will go against it. So, and I think William's at first a bit horrified, what? It's just all money. It's just all costs. And it's well, no. And he says it sounds cold or problematic to humans, but it's normal to dwarves. And also, he says it means the newlyweds start the marriage free. They're unencumbered, they're not owed. And he says, actually, then what happens is parents might actually give a wedding gift that's even more than that to start them off in their new life. So it's kind of it's just a very different way of seeing things. But I think it shows that, William's a bit yes, I am very tolerant and I'm not speciesist, and I don't, he doesn't always understand stuff, which I can understand.
It's an odd concept, really. The idea that you end up putting a financial amount, but I mean, dowries have existed for many years.
Yes, I was about to say, yes.
Dowries
are a whole thing.
It's just a very similar concept.
Well, this is the point, because William at one point says, "Oh, was it like a dowry?" And they're like, "Well, our understanding is it's only for one person. That's not really," and that seems more like buying somebody off.
Yes,
someone.
that's normal.
Whereas this is more like you mutually buy your partner off the other, which again, culture with only one gender means that's not a. There's no like dichotomy or different thing there because everyone's dwarf.
Yeah.
But William, although I think he thinks about it, he knows not enough not to actually ask about who's what gender.
Yes.
Which again reminds me of people being not with gay couples going, so which one's what? It's like, no, that's
who
not.
Wears the trousers?
That's not the thing.
Both, neither.
It's also the fact that William hadn't realised that Goodman and Bodney were a couple. But again, I don't think with dwarves, they don't really do public.
No, I'd imagine it's very much private.
Yeah, that's just how dwarves are. So, yes, it's mentioned several times. Yes, that's kind of like a whole cast of, they'll sort of appear and do some stuff. And there's a few with names, but it's mostly Goodmountain and then Bodney a bit. Bodney, who is quite often very sarcastic.
Yes.
Okay, so we talk about Otto.
Yes. Otto the vampire who loves light. Which
I don't know how you pronounce his name. Is Otto von Krieg?
I said Krieg, yeah.
There's different ways you could say that. But
yeah,
yes.
I love the idea of this vampire who, obviously, we've seen with the Black Ribboners and Lady Margalotta as a prime example.
The first time it's mentioned as Black Ribboners, yeah.
But Lady is that in order to get them off blood, you give them something else to kind of obsess over. Lady Margalotta was power,
politics,
and with Otto it is light,
photography.
If it's photography, he is absolutely
iconography. That's already another thing. Anyway, iconographs.
So he's all about taking the perfect picture, the way light plays on things. But he also experiments with the dark side, which is using.
So he uses salamanders as a flash, and they do a flash of light. But then what happens to him is
he just turns into dust, which is
he tends to scream a load.
Yes, well. Yeah, this is one thing I did remember from the book.
I know you like Otto.
Yeah, a lot of the times it just hurts. He'll just roll around a bit and he gets up back and going, okay, let's take another one. Sometimes he turns into a pile of dust, which is a bit inconvenient. And
then they have to find a drop of blood to put over the pile of dust so he kind of like reforms, respawns.
But I loved the solution, which was the vial of blood around the neck.
So
as soon as he dissolves to dust, it falls, breaks when it hits the ground. Blood releases. He gets back up and continues taking photos.
There's various. Within the book, various neat little bits people come up with, like, the stuff with Goodmountain and the press, but also that thing for Otto. But there are a few times where they have to, like, run around and try and find some blood to use for him. At one point, is this steak? And it's like, it was dog food. And he's like, what? The other thing is Otto is always written with that very schlocky, stereotypical kind of Germanic, Eastern European type accent. Yeah. So everything is William. There's, like, often the K on the end of a word instead of a G, and... Again, Pratchett, I think, having done the Eagles, very much right. We're just going to do accents for everyone now.
We love
proper Ubervold accents.
Yeah, but so as well. So like he obviously loves light, but using salamanders. But he's also taking pictures using eels that live in the dark caves,
like land eels.
Yeah,
from a cave. It's an Ubervold thing.
Yeah, and
it's creepy.
Instead of light, it emits pure dark.
Well, it's dark light.
Yeah, and this is what he's experimenting with.
The dark light descriptions are very graphic. Everyone gets scared. But at one point, there's a load of dogs, and Otto's managed to control some of them doing the whole children of the night thing, which he gets a bit embarrassed because if he does anything that's too vampiric, not even just blood sucking, he starts to get very embarrassed because he's trying to give all that up. Yeah. I think there's a question of how much you have to give up to be blood free. But at one point, Otto's asked to create a distraction, so he does this massive burst of dark light, scares away an absolute crowd of dogs and people, absolutely terrifies the Harden's killer into some sort of weird episode. Yeah,
the idea, though, that it shows the truth, which is another element, element to the book and title.
Well, it shows not what... I mean, at one point, Otto's trying to explain it to Satirissa, gets very technical and goes, we never this idea that time doesn't really exist and everything's kind of happening all at once. And she's like, no. It gets almost towards some of the history monk stuff, which obviously is coming. But the thing, like William's picture has his father over his shoulder, and he's like, you only have to talk to William for like a little bit to realise his father is a constant shadow over his shoulder. And there's various other things that sort of shows odd stuff. The dwarves hate it.
It's something, and I think that comes from, obviously, them going into the dark mines and where these
I hadn't even thought of that. Yeah, of course.
And that's, and it's for them it's blasphemy. For them it is,
Cheerie's really freaked out by it, and she's the main movable dwarf, isn't she, in the watch? And yes,
no, they really do hate it.
Yeah, because Goodman says it's unholy, and William's like, I thought dwarves didn't have religion. It's like, we don't, but we know when something's unholy.
It's like, I know it when I see it, but
William's a bit nervous about hiring Otto, but he wanted someone whose pictures. And later they're like, oh, can you do something different with them? They're like, oh, we're not asking for colour. And he's like, oh, no, colour be easy. And he is experimenting. He gets the imps like paint with acid, and then they do different printings to do colours.
I think it's a really clever use of sort of developing from nothing to all the way up to effectively doing...
Well, not nothing, because they've had iconographs since the first...
I mean, from printing the pictures, from just the basic printing.
That's true. They've got photographs already, and it's been like, what, a week?
Yeah, quite...
Which is not, again, how newspapers went in Roundworld.
But one thing I did like about Otto is quite often he'll say something and then wait for the peal of thunder.
Oh, yes, the evil thing. He'll say something portentous.
Yeah, and he'd go... And he'd kind of almost miss it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, there would be a storm.
But right at the end when he's doing
which again feels like a Thief of Time thing slightly.
Yeah, but when he's doing the big the showdown thing, it kept happening. He kept going. He'd say something, this peal of thunder, and he'd go, and he'd try something else, and there'd be another one. It's like yes, now it's doing it.
So at one point, Otto thanks William for giving him the job, even though he's nervous. And William gets very defensive and put out like that, but because he didn't want Otto to know he was nervous.
Yeah.
And this again goes back to the thing. It's like Otto says it was good that he's making the effort, and then William tries to explain his father.
Yeah.
So, and again, it's that we did say before, intentions aren't magic, but I guess Otto's a bit like, well, I can see you're nervous hiring a vampire, but at least you did give me the job, and I do appreciate that. William says he wants to be better, and Otto says, well, we can all decide who we're going to be. And of course, Otto is very much even more going against his own upbringing and nature, because he's a vampire who does not drink blood, and he's trying really hard not to drink blood, and he's going to the meetings, and he's singing the songs, he's saying how much he loves Coco, and when he feels himself starting to be triggered by stuff, he's saying it to people, and his eyes start going red. And I think Otto goes through the most pain for all of this, because not only does he have the things where the pictures, are causing him to go into dust, but also at one point he does get decapitated.
Yes.
Which is not such a problem for a vampire. Although I feel like cutting heads off was mentioned quite a bit in Carpe Jugulum.
Yes,
it is. I feel like you had to put like a lemon or something in the mouth.
I think there is something else you have to do as well. It's not quite as simple as decapitation.
They kind of put him back together. His head's under the press. They have to put him back together. So... which I guess is a bit grisly, but it's kind of played for laughs.
Yes.
Because he's not dead. But when William goes to see his father, Otto follows him, kind of after prompting from Good Mountain. So I think his friends are aware, this is a bit of a thing. And Otto says to William, he's like, I like William. He was not brought up nice, but he tries to be a nice person without even Coco and a sing-song to help him. It's hard to go against your nature. And in fact, Otto sort of threatens William's father a bit, where he deals with the heavies.
Yeah.
Or I think the sinister groundsman is what that is. Yeah. Sends them off because, of course, he's got a superhuman strength and can fly. Although we see a little bit of it, but he comes down from the chandelier, doesn't he? He kind of suggests that the only reason he doesn't do anything actually to William's father, who's scared of him, but also disgusted that he's scared of him. And at one point, Otto just kind of looks like he's going to bite him, but just gently gives him a kiss on a peck on the forehead. I think just to freak him out. And Lord de Wood's upset and embarrassed and kind of disgusted. Yeah. And he sort of suggests he's only not doing anything more because William thinks he's a good person.
Yeah. He's
got people around him that are again, with Saturissa, getting the dwarves to help him out. He's got somebody who he kind of wants to be good for. He's got this kind of team. So that's very nice.
Yes.
He also says he's better than Lord de Wood.
Yeah.
And he's the one when William's a bit boneheaded, stubborn, self-centered, arrogant, and I was like, but you make up for it in other ways. He says something's right all the time. It's like, oh, is this still your father? And then William suddenly realises that he didn't thank him. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say thank you. And I'm like, yeah, but you noticed that. So it's like every day and every day we get better and better.
Yes.
So
he's just a great character. Yeah.
He is, because some kind of grim stuff happens, but Otto's just always quite light and fun, even though actually underneath he is struggling with stuff and could go quite dark. But again, it's mostly paid for laughs, but it kind of works. Did you want to talk about the baddies?
We really should talk about the...
So this is another conspiracy story. It's not a royal conspiracy, but it's still a let's do a conspiracy against the leadership of Ankh-Morpork. It's like, is this just what happens here?
I think it's the guilds going, well, we've tried to replace
It's not the guilds, though. Okay. It's the aristocracy.
But they've gone, so still, a group in Ankh-Morpork have gone...
There's a circle of chairs. I wouldn't be surprised if the same voices from Feet of Clay.
Yes.
Who were trying to get Nobby as the sort of puppet king. At one point, William says kind of stories he won't write, as well as the ridiculous talking dog story. He also doesn't like people say, oh, there's an heir to the throne of Ankh running around. And it's like, yes, William, sure.
And werewolves in the watch.
No, he knows about that, because he realises who the werewolf is. Yeah. Well, he thinks he knows who the werewolf is.
Anyway.
We'll get to the watch bit.
The point is, though, it's a case of they've tried to do the monarchy aspect, and it's like, okay, now we're just going to
like 3 different ways.
We're just going to depose the patrician. That you
just get veterinary out of the way and get like our guy in.
Yeah.
Weird man in the iron mask type situation they have found in, was it like Quirm or somewhere?
Somewhere ridiculous, yeah. Just
a guy who's the spitting image of Lord Veterinary, who's an idiot called Charlie.
Yeah, poor Charlie.
Yeah. That's a dangerous face to have, isn't it?
It is, yes.
What's happened is these 2 killers called Mr. Tulip and Mr. Pin, or the new firm.
But they're not assassins.
Have brought it. Well, no, because assassins are like flashy and they have a school and they're aristos or people who are trained in that sort of thing. No, they're just thugs made goods. So Mr. Tulip is this massive brawn, and he's massive. He would have a drug problem, except he never seems to buy drugs, he just buys all sorts of other stuff. So he's usually been snorting like mothballs and like detergent and things. But he's obviously big and got enough constitution that he can take that. But he always looks a bit deranged. And he always says ing all the time. So it's like,
ing.
What is with this ing city? And then at the end, after he said it a bit, Satrissa hears it and she starts saying ing. And it's funny because whenever he says ing, the typeface has a dash and then ing. But when Satrissa says it, she just says ing on its own. So because she just knows, it must be something rude, but not what. And at first it seems like it's being bleeped out, but no, he's just saying ing. Because some people are a bit like, why is he saying ing all the time? It's like, it's a speech impediment. The weird thing with Mr. Tulip, though, is that he is also an art connoisseur.
Yes.
And every so often when they're doing something, he'll go up to something and start talking about, like, the brushwork or the inlays or the veneer on something. And so it's this odd thing where you've got this very violent, horrifying guy who's also got this very elaborate taste in this like particular area. And then you've got Mr. Pin, who is the smaller brains of the outfit, but obviously kind of even more vicious for that.
Yes. Yeah, I'd say he's the nastier of the 2. Yeah, he's the man with the plan, the one with the contacts.
But they've never worked in Ankh-Morpork before. It's the first time now. They do not like it.
No, it's the watch don't behave like they should. They keep chasing and,
Yeah, they used to watch from being people you can bribe or run away from.
Yeah, which doesn't work.
They don't like that there's werewolf in the watch. They don't like that there's vampires here. They're not used to multiculturalism, I think. No. And then they've obviously been hired by this shadowy group of chairs, which is literally described as a circle where everyone's in shadow, which again, I think must be the same, at least some of the same people as Feet of Clay, because how many shadowy conspirators can there be in this city? Yeah.
But I think the idea is that I get the feeling, and I'm not expert in any ways, underworld things, a something going through London organised crime and
it definitely feels like it's well, there are some references. At one point there's definitely a Pulp Fiction reference because they start talking about what they call sausage in the bun and Quirm, and I was like, I've seen this movie. I think there's also a Reservoir Dogs reference. I think it's supposed to be that kind of thing, but it does feel very kind of like London gangster kind of thing as well.
I do wonder whether it's
like not Cray Brothers.
No, but was there something running through, I say London underworld, but was there this being kids we weren't, well, not adults, we weren't quite aware of as a...
I know, it definitely feels like a trope. I feel like I've read other books where there's been this, here's a pair of really horrible killers, but this really tight-knit duo and they're doing things, but they physically look quite different.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a thing.
That's a trope, but I feel like there's some real world, round world analogy that perhaps we're not quite getting.
That's right. These books have a lot to them. So interesting though. What's interesting is what happens after the dark light. Yeah. In that Mr. Pin starts sort of thinking he sees and hears stuff from the shadows.
He does go slightly cray.
Well, I think it's just that
but not that type of cray, the other type of cray.
Yes. Well done.
Thank you.
I think he starts realising like how many people he's killed and that maybe there's something waiting in the hereafter. So he starts talking to Mr. Tulip about what he believes happens after death. And Mr. Tulip, who's not used to thinking, is like, what is this?
Well, no, it's fine. It's fine. He's got his potato.
Yeah, well, he's worried that he's asking, but yes, Mr. Tulip only remembers, and again, you get this weird insight into, like, there was a place with snow and trees and beautiful pictures, which sound to me like icons.
Yeah.
But it's all right as long as you had your potato. So he was just told that. He was just, if you have your potato, it'll all be fine.
Well, I get this feeling that something horrific happened in his childhood.
Well, it's very clear. He says something about flames. It's very clear that like it was a village that was sacked. It felt kind of like Russian Orthodox to me somehow, and then something being cleared.
Yeah, something horrific happened, and it was.
And now he's like this.
And he was told, "You'll be fine as long as you got your potato as a vacation."
One of the few things he can remember as a child.
That's it.
Whereas I think Mr. Pin never really thought about that sort of thing, and now he is, and he's freaking out, and it makes him a bit unstable and wobbly, and he's not a man you want to be unstable and wobbly. No. Also, the fact that they are dealing a lot with Mr. Slant, who's obviously the intermediary between the
conspiracists,
the conspiracy people and them. So what they do is they're trying to get some insurance as well, because they realise it's all going a bit iffy. So they go to the thaumaturgical park near the university, which I find quite funny because there's various bioscience parks and things that are being built not far from the local campus. But they buy basically a recording imp. And actually that's the thing that clues William in, because when he gets hold of it and realises that it's saying Mr. Slant quotes, "Lie can run around the world before the truth has got his boots on," is what William realises. Oh, because again, we hear that phrase multiple times.
Yeah, you do hear it.
But mostly is William remembering his father saying it, and then other people say it, and then it's there, and that's what makes William realise actually,
who's behind it all.
And he's like, if my dad's involved, he's running it.
Yeah.
Like, he's that kind of guy. There's this really strong duo. And at one point they're disguised as a nun and a priest, and they're trying to track down dogs.
There's a lot going on in this book.
Yeah, we can't describe all of it.
We're not going to go through everything. We'll touch on the highlights.
But yes, it's that they do both die, and what happens is that in fact Mr. Pin steals Mr. Tulip's potato, knocks him down to avoid death himself, although he still dies. Yeah. And then they meet death in the afterlife. Well, death in the bit after you live. Death sort of asks Mr. Tulip what he was like. Oh, he took my potato. He's like, well, the potato would be fine. And Death's a bit like, well, do not put all your faith in vegetables. And Death ends up kind of showing Mr. Tulip. He says, oh, this is my... I understand you're a man of taste. This is my collection. Ends up showing Mr. Tulip. I think it's all the lives of people that he had killed.
Yes.
And she was like, I feel like I should be sorry. And Death's like, yeah. It's like, it might take a bit of a run-up to it. And then what happens is that Mr. Tulip ends up being reincarnated as a woodworm.
Yes.
In a desk. Mr. Pin, however, is just so awful, and Death's a bit there like, well, no one's claiming him as religion, so now it's up to me. The Death of Rats turns up, and Death's a bit like, oh, who knows not what evil lurks in the hearts of men? And Death of Rats like, squeak, and Death's like, well, yes, of course, me, but I wonder if anyone else. Death sort of considers Tulip had something that could be redeemable, but Pin didn't. And then what happens is that, so throughout the book, a guy's been bringing his humorous shaped vegetables to the newspaper office to show them. And I think that's the thing that makes them start wanting to do pictures. So they can take a picture of the vegetables. Yeah. And in fact, it's quite funny. At one point, Satirist is a bit freaked out and goes, oh, this place gives me the humorous vegetables. But yes, he digs out a humorous vegetable, but it's not quite so funny. It looks like a face. It actually looks like Mr. Pin.
Yeah.
And William's like, did you just dig this up? He's like, no, it's been in the sack here for months. And it's like, oh, okay, because William's the main person who was, being threatened by Mr. Pin. Yeah,
because they talk about... They basically talk about reincarnation, but it's temporal. It doesn't... It's quite...
It's outside of time.
Yeah, it's quite... They get their kind of abundances, but I think Mr. Tulip is quite happy to be a woodworm, because he thinks to himself, it's some in good wood this is.
Yes.
They are two horrific characters, really, in some respect.
Kind of use to comic effect to an extent, but also, yes, and I think add a bit of depth to some of it.
They don't they don't do much in the way of murdering on page, but it's clear
they've done a lot of stuff before.
Yeah.
They have the running joke that the Thieves Guild tried to rob them, and then this is where the Thieves Guild have a brochure, and you get a load of tacky gifts, a bit like you would get when you used to do catalogue shopping or like phone shopping, a barbecue set that will make you the envy of your friends, and they're like, what is this? So I think they kill those thieves.
They do, I suppose, yes.
But then later, Mr. Tulip has like Kiss the Chef apron, and then like some tongs and barbecue tools.
I think it's just...
I think Pratchett must have been particularly annoyed by some sort of advertising.
I think it's kind of, those things are also robbing you. You're paying over the odds for some crappy,
I think it's being thrown in as a free gift. I mean, in that it's on your theft.
But it's the idea is that if you take out the platinum, thing, you'll get these free gifts as well, and it's just another way of robbing you, making it look like you're getting something great when actually you're just getting
tat.
Yeah.
Should we go on to the class bit?
Yes.
Yes. So obviously William's an aristocrat, and Satirissa is middle class, but kind of aspires to be better or to be respectable at least, which I don't know if that's necessarily better, but it has aspirations. Otto, I guess, is wearing evening wear, but he does then have like a photographer's jacket.
I wouldn't necessarily.
And dwarves don't really
Otto doesn't really. He's quite happy living in the basement of the print shop where he can do his experiments. So I don't think
was he living there, or was he just working there?
I think he was living there as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I suppose it was crypt-like. Satirissa has this whole point about what people do and don't like in newspapers. It's not necessarily politics. And William's saying, are you saying people aren't interested in the truth? This is when William wants to publish the truth of what happened, because, Vetinari, because they try to make it sound like Vetinari has gone mad, so they can, like, quietly retire him and then bring in, their kind of chosen guy, who's one of the guild leaders. And Satirissa goes, listen, what's true to a lot of people is that they need the money for rent by the end of the week. And she makes the point that, the meeting notes she gets are often arguments. Like, there's one thing about whether parrots or cockatoos are in the same category by the bird fanciers, and William's a bit like, oh, that's all silly stuff. And she says a lot of the notes she gets are from people who are doing manual work. They're leading little lives that are controlled by other people. Do you see? They've got no say in who runs the city, but they can damn well see to it that cockatoos aren't lumped in with the parrots. It's not their fault, it's just how things are.
Yeah.
And this made me think it was a point that Farrah Mendelssohn made in an episode of 8 Days Down when Jones, I can't remember the exact context in that, but it was the point that for a long time, up until quite recently, people just did what their parents did.
Yes.
Your parent would do a job and you do that job, and that's what you did. And you were expected to find your interests in hobbies and, clubs and things outside of work.
I do the same job that my mother did.
Okay, well, that was your...
just kind of back to the past, this was but no one does that now. So
well, I wouldn't say no one did now, because people still do it now.
Sorry, I was just yeah. No, I know what you mean.
The point is, there's more of a modern expectation that you find fulfillment through your work.
Yes, but
it's still not necessarily uncommon for people to have either the same business handed down or to kind of go into a similar line of work with their parents, because that's the thing they know.
Doctors in generations of doctors, or
yes, I've definitely had phone calls from those people. Yeah, there's some of that, but even just all sorts of business.
I know. I just thought.
But the point is, with sort of the modern sort of expectation is that you're supposed to find fulfillment through your work. Whereas actually, I think before it was like, well, this is the job you do, but then your fulfillment, your interest comes outside of that, which I think still happens to an extent, but it's in a different way now. We're not given as much time for that sort of thing.
Ironically.
Yeah. William sort of says he thinks he understands, and Satyrissa's like, no. She's checked he's in twerp's peerage, and he probably doesn't understand. And he points out he doesn't have any money, and he does work, and she says that he got to choose, which again just makes me think of the bit in Common People where it's like, everybody hates a tourist.
Yes.
And if you called your dad, he could stop it all.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, William is not calling his dad.
No, I wouldn't. His dad wouldn't stop it all either.
But she makes the point that aristocrats don't like to see other toffs starving. They find them silly jobs with serious wages. Yes. Which also feels very true.
Yep.
Except now the silly jobs have become stuff like, I don't know. Yes, running the country. So
a silly little job for a silly little man. Anyway,
this is also the book that, which again is one of the quotes you see quite often banded around with Discworld, is that privilege just means private law.
Yep.
And William points out that his father doesn't believe that ordinary laws apply to him. He doesn't believe they can touch him. And if they do, he'll just shout until they go away.
Or you get your personal lawyer to find a loophole in some ancient statutes that gets you home.
But William says, shout until you get your own way, ignore the rules, that's the deferred way. And he goes, up until me. And it's like, Satyrus was careful not to let her expression change.
Yes.
Because, again, William has been not breaking, but certainly slipping around boundaries like most of the book.
Yeah.
And again, we've always said about William not publishing names to protect family. He does all his father out of the city, but again,
I suppose
aristocracy keeping themselves out the paper.
Yeah, I mean, in some respects, he does have a sister, to think of.
Yeah, he does mention it's for the family, but
and
but I mean, lots of people would probably do things for the family if they could, but they're not rich enough to do so.
Yeah, I know. I'm not saying he's not doing it out of goodness for his father. It's more about protecting his sister and mother.
But he's in a position where he can because he's
But as long as Vetinari knows the truth.
Well, okay, so we don't hear.
No, we don't hear, but
But there's also a bit where Mr. Pin is talking to the conspirators, being concerned citizens. Like, he knew all about concerned citizens. Wherever they were, they all spoke the same private language, where traditional values meant hang someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But then again, you get the little versions of that, like the guy at William's breakfast table who's like the more petty and the street bigot. And at one point he's saying, they say that Vetinari's got this, lady friend in Ubervold. And William's like, who's they? And also, who cared? Like, why? Why is that? But the other thing that's quite important is, so William does the headline when he reveals, that there was a double Vetinari, that there was a plot to make it seem like he was mad or had gone insane, and also flew the city with a load of money, even though none of that made sense, and all of the facts that he got from the Watch found himself didn't tie up. And yes, so he does the headline, Dog Bites Man, because Vetinari's little dog Waffles bit him, and then that's why they were after the dog. And the people around William's table, because William sits there and watches the people read the paper.
Yeah, it's not
partly without them knowing, because it's not until he after this, when he gets angry at this other guy, that he reveals it's him and a young lady. And they're only kind of interested. It's all very far-fetched political stuff, but they're glad the dog is okay.
Yes.
Oh, and are there any good vegetables this week?
Yes.
Or today? And William's like, I would have thought it's quite important if Lord Vetinari isn't guilty. And another guy, not the bigoted one necessarily, called Mr. Mackleguff, goes, oh yes, I dare say to them as has to deal with these things, but I don't quite see where we come into it, though, which is exactly Satyrus's point. It's like, a politician has done something awful. Yes, that is what they do.
Yeah.
What is happening with the things I have to deal with in my life?
Yeah.
And of course, those things do tie up and they do marry together. But I think often, again, the news is not trying to draw those lines.
I mean, I think obviously, who is running the area you're in, be it country or city-state, it has a direct impact on your life to a degree, especially if they're Mad King or for most of the time it's not really
you'll notice it in certain things, but you're not always encouraged to connect things together,
and
again
you just work around it.
But this goes back to what Satyrus was saying. It's like, people, they can control whether their club is doing this thing or that thing. They can't control who runs the city, and again, Ankh-Morpork is not a democracy.
No, very much.
So you just end up with the guy in charge.
Because even when he was deposed, it was just that the guilds got together.
I imagine the aristocrats kind of did some pushing there. What's interesting, the votes to retire Vetinari wasn't unanimous, and the 4 guild leaders who held out were all the female ones.
Yes, because they know that they've got common sense.
Well, William says, what an interesting life Lord Vetinari must have led. So I don't know it's quite that similar. I think there's some implication there, which is a bit like, But again, I can see that female, because Vetinari seems like someone who's very pragmatic and isn't going to let gender be the thing that gets against people.
I think that those guilds know they're thriving under Vetinari, because Vetinari treats everyone the same.
I mean,
whereas
it's the beggars, the seamstresses, the launderers, and the Guild of Exotic Dancers, which is apparently separate from the seamstresses. Yeah. But those are also all very much areas of work or guilds that cover people who would not be treated well or being seen as serious under a different kind of rulership.
Yeah, that's
under
the thing.
More patriarchal rulership.
Yeah, and the guy that they're lining up for to take.
The guy that they're lining up probably does a lot of work for the seamstresses, because he is the head of the Guild of Leather Makers, and they describe his shop, and someone's like, "There's not a leather makers." Then like, oh wait, there's one shop that makes leather items with dangly bits, and things. Clearly some sort of like adult shop.
Yes. True, but I still think that he'd most likely be pushed, and those 4 guilds would end up being pushed.
Well,
again.
yeah.
But anyway,
do you want to do Harry King or the Watch from the outside?
Let's go with Harry King, and then we'll go with the Watch.
I guess that kind of goes into the class thing quite well, actually.
Yeah. So Harry King is nouveau-ish. Is that
probably, yeah. Well, he's King of the Golden River. Yeah. Harry King started as almost lowest of the low in that he's basically this street kid, and they'd like go through like rubbish scraps to find things you could sell. So basically, yeah, kind of lowest of the low. I mean, there's also the fact that the canteen crew, who are lower than even the beggars, are the ones distributing the newspaper, and also the ones who are sheltering poor little waffles, as it turned out. So they're quite important to that. And again, at one point, there's a bit where William visits them, and you're like, well, he's a toff, and he's visiting these people who live under a bridge, but they feel like they're kings, because they're satisfied with their life. Yeah. So there's that. I mean, Harry King is somebody. Well, it's that kind of idea of like going from quite a low position to being very wealthy, and Alan Sugar kind of vaguely comes around because he used to be like a barrow boy or something. Yeah. But it's this idea of, sort of rising up through your own, self-made man, through your own ingenuity and business sense, and being very hard-nosed. So Harry King, basically, any kind of waste, anything in the city, including urine, which obviously tanners use, various kind of feces, which you can use for, tanning and dyeing.
There's so many things that people will pay him to take away.
Yeah, so he starts a business.
Can sell on. A horse dies in the street, someone will pay him to take it away.
Yeah.
And then you've got...
This is the first mention of him, and it's this interesting thing that he is obviously now so wealthy and so embedded in the city's infrastructure, because he is basically all of the waste management. And I think we heard this before, like you mentioned Knowles, I think, in the previous book, and then I think it's that he's probably employing them, they work for him. I know he comes up more later. But this idea that because he's quite wealthy now, like his wife has some pretensions and would like to be seen as fancier, but he's still known as Piss Harry.
Yeah.
Or Harry King of the Golden River. Yeah. So everyone's sort of like, that's the guy that trades in urine, right? And he trades in tons of stuff. And William ends up going to him because they need paper. And because the deal they had, the Engravers Guild have kind of undercut them. And Harry kind of like helps them out by saying, oh, wouldn't it be a shame if this cart went missing? Yeah. And William doesn't get it because he's a little bit too truthful, but Goodmountain gets it, and they deal with that. But the thing is, when he's talking to him, at first Harry King isn't inclined to particularly like William. And then he talks to him, and he's a bit like, oh, he's just like I was a kid, but he's never been near. He's like a mudlark that's never been near any mud.
Yeah,
he was born too far away. Because again, this idea that William will just dig and dig until he finds what he's looking for, and that's it was obviously.
I like the character of Harry King, and I think it's very on the nose for certain groups of people who have made money through their own ingenuity. Or
I think the thing with Harry is that he isn't particularly pretentious about it. He knows he deals in muck and stuff, but his wife doesn't like it. So one of the ways that he gets Williams to help him out is that he'll report on the society wedding. Well, it's not a society wedding because it's the daughter of Harry King, but actually his wife wants it to be fancy. It's like, well, we'll put it in the Times, and then later it turns out a load of highfalutin people are told to go.
Yes, because he speaks to veterinary what wants to. That is kind of, I think there is definitely that kind of those people out there who have the money to break into to those upper echelons. They are richer than but doesn't.
But people know where they're from and hold against them, which isn't very fair. On the other hand, I do feel like Harry King could be one of those people because they've made it themselves, that they're not very forgiving of other people's. Not Harry King so much, but I just sort of feel like there's that type, and there is an element of a bit like, oh, I built myself up and got my empire and shows what you can do. But then not everyone always is very generous with that. Like, well, I did it, so other people have no excuse not to. And it's like, well, everyone's situation's a bit. Yeah. But he's. I don't think he's ashamed of anything. But he's also aware that, like, his wife, again, probably even more so than Satirissa, because of the amount of money she has these aspirations of propriety and respectability and stuff, which I think makes me think of is in Frasier, when Niles finds out that Maris's family money doesn't come from timber, it comes from urinal cakes, which Niles never knew because the whole family had hidden it so much.
Yes.
I also like that that episode explains what urinal cake is for the ladies. But yeah, so Harry King will become again a sort of
Yeah,
Ankh-Morpork, and this is the first time he's come up, but he's definitely an interesting character.
And I think it kind of explains the how Ankh-Morpork works as far as, you know, otherwise it's a city. How do you get rid of all the rubbish?
It's a city with an incredibly polluted river, which is clearly, I mean, the Thames, Chicago River, the LA River. There's been lots of rivers that have been so polluted it's a bit like this thing is a nightmare. So I feel like it's sort of all those combined with its own like horrible crust.
Yeah, but I think he's a nice. He's very recognisable.
I wouldn't say he's a nice guy. He's very ruthless. That's how he's got readers.
No, but he's very recognisable. You can definitely see. He's
quite blunt and down to earth,
and the rest of it. You know, and his wife is very understandable, relatable.
Well, we don't see her, but we hear about her.
Yeah, and her position. It's and it's nice at the end.
And he wants to do something good for his daughter's wedding.
Yeah, exactly. He's coming from a place of wanting his best for his family, and it was also amusing at the end when the word is going to veterinary. Are you by any chance going to Harry King's your daughter's wedding?
Yeah,
it's like perhaps it might be encouraged. But other people might. Mm-hmm. And I think it's he gets his wife's happy, so he's a happy man.
Should we talk about the watch now? So obviously William is investigating, something mysterious and odd. Well, it is a crime because Jerome Knott does get shot, although he's alive.
Stabbed.
Yes, no, you're right, stabbed. No, somebody tries to shoot the dog and the dog bites him. That's it. We see the watch from the outside because all the other books we've seen, it's mostly from Vimes, Kara, a few others' point of view, but it's definitely within the watch. And this is somebody completely outside of the watch looking at them.
It's quite interesting because you then, like in a lot of the other books, you'll run into like the canting crew from the outside, or in this, you see the watch as that kind of that.
These people who are on the street and about the place.
The characters that so...
You're like, it's that guy. He seems like more of a jerk now.
De Word ends up scene of the crime where Cheery's doing the CSI stuff, and he talks to Vimes a lot.
Because William tries to kind of inveigle his way into the palace. Nobby and Detritus are fairly straightforward about it, but then William tries to use careful wording on Cheery and she's not fooled by it, and he's like, Commander Vimes now here, and she's like, that's not the same as you being allowed to be here. So because again, Cheery's smart and should be a sergeant, but she is in her own Soko role. Williams look at them, and it says that William's own upbringing said that the watch was seen as a useful section of the criminal class, which was anyone on less than $1,000 according to Lord de Word, but not anything that should affect the good, therefore wealthy people. William is aware that a lot of people that he knows that he grew up with are very affronted by Vimes because he has told his watchman to use the front door and not the servants' entrance.
Yes. Oh, how dare they.
It's like William's class understood that justice was like coal or potatoes. You ordered it when you needed it.
Yes.
William sort of feels predisposed to like Vimes because of the enemies he has. But again, he sort of sees him as badly dressed, badly spoken, badly educated. Yeah. And so again, he's got this initial he's rather scruffy sort of thing, which again is a thing a bit in politics here sometimes. Yes. This guy seems scruffy, and it's like, that's not the worst thing.
No.
Vimes finds William troublesome because he's so perceptive. And also William does that thing where he starts writing down what everyone's saying. It's like, you can't write down what I'm saying. Well, if I can't write down what you're saying, can I write down why I'm not allowed to write down what you're saying? And so you kind of got this kind of like press versus police,
which
tension.
Is accurate. And I think there's a book there where this book is a companion one to a watch book where they're investigating the actual crime. But
William's the one who kind of finds it out.
Yes,
So I wondered if it started as a watch book, but then, because the problem with watch is it's so embedded, gotten big, and it's gotten organised, and it's gotten very official, but it's so much that you can't really do a lot of scrappy investigating, which William can.
I think yes. I mean, I think there is a companion book, but I don't know what that companion...
I don't think it's a companion book. I think you can just see what the other sort of side of it would be.
I don't know, but it's
But that's not as satisfying because they're not the ones that solve it.
Could have a part of the story told much more from the watcher's point of view.
I wonder if it's fun just writing them from the outside, though. I think it's interesting to see these characters we know. There's a bit, and Vimes also is a bit like, well, who are you? Dealing with trouble is my job, but who are you responsible to? I have to answer for what I do, but you? Seems to me you can do what the hell you like. And William goes, I suppose I'm answerable to the truth, sir. And Vimes goes, really? How exactly? So, I mean, Vimes is obviously very sceptical, as he is right to be.
Yes.
Because, who is this guy? And then there's a bit where Vimes turns up and he has a truncheon and William has a notebook and it's called like a clash of symbols. Vimes also says to the watch, we're not stupid, we only look stupid. But what happens is that Vimes has been getting the watchman to keep an eye on William because he's like, well, this is clearly going to cause trouble and we don't want trouble. But then when William starts annoying Vimes, he's like, right, I'm going to take the surveillance off him and he can manage his own for a while, which is how Pin and Tulip managed to get there and actually threaten them in the first place.
Yeah. But I think it's a good example of the frictions between the free press and the needs of a police investigation to keep some things not in the public eye, for right or wrong.
Not just because you're related to
but sometimes you can't put too much into the public domain because
we also have like law stuff about like if there's going to be a court case.
You put too much into the public domain, and look at the number of times they've had to, unfortunately in recent years, publicly announce that the person that did the crime is not of a certain group to stop the piling on and the general
hysteria
that papers are then putting out because
well, not just papers.
Well,
I think papers are more careful about that.
But news organisations.
Although again, if you write something that was basically not true, you just have to do a tiny correction that one can see. What happens is that William realises there's a werewolf in the watch. Oh no, he's told it.
He's told, yeah.
And he decides it must be Corporal Knobs.
Well,
and everyone knows it's a bit like, oh,
yes,
Corporal Knobs.
Because he has this conversation with Angua, basically going, oh, I know who it is, and he's like,
she's
yes,
like, what?
Yeah,
he's like, I'll keep it. Don't worry, I'll keep Corporal Knobs secret. And she's like, yes, Corporal Knobs would really appreciate that. William realises he's being tailed by the werewolf, so he goes out and buys a load of bottles, like incredibly strong oils, including one that the person's like, we can't sell you that much. That small exists in the world, and also no one will be able to smell anything ever. So he gets, it's like scallion oil or something? It's something like that.
Yes.
And he kind of gets small jars inside bigger jars of water. And then when he realises he's being tailed, he kind of climbs up. Well, it sort of sounds a bit like a fire escape, but we know they don't have those in Ankh-Morpork because the fire escape's through the roof. But he kind of manages to get a little bit higher up, sees that the wolf is following him, throws it down, then legs it. And then later you see Angua in a complete state because she's just had something incredibly strong smelling smash right in front of her, and Vime's like, I'll go after him for assaulting an officer. And it's a bit like, was this officer in uniform? Did they announce themselves to me as an officer? Because that's the thing, William gets Slant in to sort out all of his legal problems because William knows that Slant's been involved in the conspiracy and who's involved, so he's a bit like, you know what, I'm bringing in a family tie.
Yes.
Classic Aristo. It's like, well, the family lawyers will deal with it.
Yeah. It's
like, not too far, got too far away from that, has he?
No. There's
also the interesting thing about Veterinary's terrier. Both of them. Because, so there's Ruffles,
I like Ruffles.
the literal terrier of Vetinari, who ends up being the chief witness, but William has to find someone who speaks dog.
And obviously there's no talking dogs in Ankh-Morpork.
Well, he assumes it's a werewolf, but Gaspode is the unnamed source, but he uses Deep Bone.
Yes.
Which is clearly an X-Files reference. Because at one point, William says something about Mr. Slant will dig and dig. And he says that's where he got to stay, by digging, which, because Mr. Slant is a zombie, so there's that. But the other point is that a couple of points, Vimes is described as Veterinary's terror in that he gets told something never lets go. So it's this interesting thing, again, outside of the watch and outside of knowing Vimes, that, he's sort of got the same name as this dog, and that's his, again, you see more of his reputation, which you sort of, I think, get slivers of in different contexts, like what his wife overhears, what the officers think in the watch books, but here you've just got it from a citizen.
Yeah. We could go on for a while. We haven't even really touched on this whole conspiracy and how they were doing it.
I think the thing is that the conspiracy, I feel like there's always some sort of conspiracy against veterinary, isn't there? Or something. Yeah. It's just not royal this time, but it involves the dog waffles, and we get to see more of the Canton crew and how they're involved, and that if you want to hide someone from a werewolf, the best place to hide is inside the coat of Foul Old Run.
Yes, because that smell is,
And the fact that William still thinks it's ridiculous there's a talking dog, despite... That's the thing, Gaspard gets quite a bit to do in this.
No, he's clearly Gaspard,
with Ron, he's Ron's thinking brain dog.
Yes.
Sometimes Ron will be doing his old Millennium Hand and Shrimp thing, and then suddenly he'll say something very cogent and lucid and helpful. Because, again, let's not forget that Gaspard made to start as an entertainment agent.
Yeah.
So everyone keeps thinking that if Gasper's there talking, it must be Ron who's saying it.
Yeah.
So this is kind of like the disguise. But yes, the fact that it's... the one clue is that at one point Gasper says to William while hiding as Deep Bone, says, pull one of the others, it's got bells on. And William's like, what a weird thing to say, one of the others. And you think, oh, he must be a foreigner. And it's like, no, he's just not a biped. It's nice that Gaspode... It seemed like he was almost a bit left behind in Fifth Elephant, to be honest.
Yes.
Like, he just sort of seemed to be the Ubervold, the dead wolf and doing a howl.
Yeah.
Now, one hopes that Angular or Carrot brought him back.
Somewhat. He's, I don't know. I feel like...
Or did he just, hop on Vimes' coach?
I feel like he's got enough nonsense, knowledge, and he'd have made his way back eventually.
Yeah. Well, anyway, at least he
does.
He seems to fit into a place.
Yeah.
Did you want to go through any particularly funny lines?
I can't think of any at the moment.
There's one, particularly, which I did not understand when I was a teenager. William visits the canteen crew on the assistance of Deep Bone, because that's when he'll meet Waffles and get his testimony about what actually happened in the palace. William is given tea by the canteen crew. And the Duckman, who's obviously kind of the most genteel of the group, drinks some. Oh, yeah, we have lemon here. And then William takes a sip, and it's like, hardly a day goes by when we don't find a slice of lemon coming down the river. And then William thinks to himself, spit or swallow, the internal conundrum. And again, I did not quite understand. I was only 14 when this book came out. I probably read it a little bit later, but I would not have understood such a joke. This is the thing. The narrative voice in Pratchett is very kind of, no one will exactly say what the new patrician's shop actually sells exactly. They'll just refer to it a lot. So there's a lot of referring to things as though the narrative voice is embarrassed, but sometimes he does just put some stuff in there and you'll be like, oh yeah, yep. He doesn't need he's like trying. He's like, is it too hot? And he's like, yes, too hot.
Too hot, yes. Gone out there.
So I think that's the main one. I think every time you read these, there's more stuff you get. Yeah. So not even just that. Oh, the other bit is Gaspode muttering of humans. Oh, a couple of funds, and they think they're lords of bloody creation, which I think kind of very much Gaspode's view.
Yeah. I think we've covered quite a lot there.
Yes.
I think generally we both enjoyed the book thoroughly.
Things I always find with these books that the pacing is different to what I think. There always seems to be a bit more build-up than I remember, because I sort of remember the key points.
Yeah.
It's all good stuff.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. Next time, we will be talking about The Thief of Time, which is one of the ones I actually have read quite a lot. History Monks. Yay, yes. History Monks. Look forward to that one. So thank you all very much for listening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
We will catch you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Dining Table Discworld. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dining Table Discworld. You can also find us on BlueSky at dtdiscworld. All our other contact information and credits for our music can be found in our show notes. Thank you for listening again, and we'll see you in our next episode.